The massive alien ships appeared over Earth's major cities on a Tuesday morning. Captain Jake Miller was drinking his coffee at the Houston Space Command when the alarms started screaming. The screens showed 12 enormous vessels, each one larger than a city block, hovering silently above New York, London, Tokyo, and 9 other major population centers. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Karen Wade, her fingers dancing across the communication console. "It's coming from all the ships at once." Jake set down his coffee and straightened his uniform. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The creature had purple skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth that seemed too wide for its head. When it spoke, the words came through a translation device. "I am Admiral Zexthor of the Krillian Empire, representing the Galactic Federation. Your species has been selected for integration into our civilization. You have 24 of your planet's rotational periods to surrender all governmental authority and begin resource extraction operations. This is standard procedure for all primitive worlds." Jake stared at the screen for a moment. Around the command center, dozens of military personnel had stopped their work to listen. The alien continued speaking as if reading from a script. "Resistance is pointless and will only result in unnecessary casualties. Every intelligent species in this galaxy has accepted this arrangement. Your compliance is expected and will be rewarded with basic survival necessities and limited self-governance in designated areas." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in complete silence. Jake looked around at his staff. Some looked terrified, others angry, but most just seemed confused. "Did that thing just tell us to surrender our entire planet?" asked Commander Alex Stone, Jake's second-in-command. "That's exactly what it did," Jake replied. He walked over to the communication console. "Karen, open a channel to all the alien ships. Make sure they can hear us clearly." "Channel open, sir." Jake took a deep breath and spoke directly into the microphone. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the Earth Defense Force. I have a message for Admiral Zexthor and the Galactic Federation." He paused for effect. "Come and take it." He cut the transmission and turned to his staff. "Get me General Pete Davis on the line, and start calling up all reserves. Looks like we're going to war." 3 hours later, Dr. Lisa Brooks arrived at the command center. She was Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien life, though until today her work had been purely academic. Jake briefed her on the situation while monitoring reports from around the globe. "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Brooks said, studying the recorded transmission. "They're acting like this is routine, like they've done this thousands of times before." "Maybe they have," Alex suggested. "Maybe that's how they built their empire. Show up, demand surrender, and most species just give up." Dr. Brooks nodded, slowly. It would explain their confidence. But why would any species just surrender without a fight? Before anyone could answer, the alien ships began moving. They descended lower over each city, and new transmissions started coming in. This time, the aliens seemed genuinely puzzled. "Earth military forces, you have not responded to our integration offer. Perhaps there was a communication error. We require your immediate surrender to avoid unnecessary conflict." Jake grabbed the microphone again. "No communication error, Admiral. We heard you just fine. The answer is still no." This time, there was a longer pause before the alien responded. "This is irregular. No species has ever refused integration after witnessing our fleet capabilities. Are you certain your leadership understands the situation?" "We understand perfectly," Jake said. You want our planet. We're not giving it to you. If you want it, you'll have to fight for it." The silence stretched for nearly 10 minutes. When Admiral Zexthor's voice returned, it sounded different. Less confident, more uncertain. "Very well. The Krillian Empire will demonstrate why resistance is futile. You have 6 hours to reconsider your position before we begin standard pacification procedures." Around the world, similar conversations were taking place. In every major capital, military leaders were giving the same response. The aliens seemed to grow more confused with each rejection. Dr. Brooks spent those 6 hours analyzing every detail of the alien transmissions. She called Jake over to her workstation as the deadline approached. "I think I understand what's happening," she said. "Look at their language patterns. Everything they're saying sounds scripted, like they've said it 1,000 times before. And notice how they keep calling this standard procedure and normal integration. I don't think they've ever encountered real resistance." "What do you mean?" "I think every other species they've met has just given up immediately. They're not prepared for a fight because they've never had to actually fight anyone." Jake considered this. "So we might actually have a chance?" "Maybe." "But Jake, there's something else. Look at this." She pointed to her analysis of the alien ship formations. "They're not even in defensive positions. They're just hovering there like they're waiting for us to walk up and surrender." The deadline passed without any human surrenders. Instead, reports came in from around the globe of military units moving into position. The aliens seemed to wait for another hour, as if expecting Earth's governments to change their minds at the last minute. When the first shots were fired, they came from the alien ships, but their weapons seemed designed to disable rather than destroy. They targeted military installations with what appeared to be stunning devices rather than explosive weapons. Jake watched the tactical displays as reports flooded in. "They're not trying to kill us," he realized. "They're trying to knock us out." "Standard pacification procedures," Dr. Brooks quoted. "I bet that's exactly what it is. They probably stun the military, wait for the government to surrender, then wake everyone up to start mining operations or whatever they want." But the human response wasn't standard at all. When alien stun weapons hit military bases, backup forces immediately moved in. When the aliens disabled communication centers, others came online. Every time the aliens expected surrender, humans adapted and kept fighting. By the end of the first day, Admiral Zexthor sent another transmission. This time he sounded genuinely bewildered. "Earth forces, you have sustained significant damage to your military capabilities. Standard protocol requires your surrender at this point. Why do you continue resistance?" Jake's response was simple. "Because this is our planet, and we don't give up." The transmission ended, and Jake could almost feel the alien confusion through the static. Dr. Brooks was already working on new theories about galactic civilization, but Jake was focused on something else entirely. For the first time since the ships arrived, he was starting to think humanity might actually win this thing. Dr. Lisa Brooks had barely slept in 3 days. The alien transmissions kept coming, and each one revealed more about how the galaxy really worked. She sat in her makeshift laboratory at Houston Space Command, surrounded by screens showing intercepted alien communications. "Jake, you need to hear this," she called out as Captain Miller entered the room. He looked exhausted too. The alien attacks had continued for 72 hours now, but they weren't like any warfare humans had ever seen. "What did you find?" "I've been analyzing their internal communications. The translator is getting better at their language every hour." She pointed to a transcript on her screen. Listen to this conversation between Admiral Zexthor and his fleet. Commanders! She played the audio. Even through the mechanical translation, the alien voices sounded frustrated. Sub-Admiral Veltar reports that Earth forces have exceeded acceptable casualty ratios, the first voice said. They have sustained 12% losses and continue combat operations. This violates standard warfare protocols. Perhaps they do not understand the rules, Admiral Zexthor replied. Increase stunning intensity and broadcast surrender requirements every 10 minutes. Dr. Brooks paused the recording. Jake, do you understand what this means? They have rules, actual rules, about how wars are supposed to work. What kind of rules? She pulled up another file. I've been piecing this together from dozens of transmissions. Apparently, when two civilizations fight in the galaxy, they follow a very specific pattern. First, they declare war formally. Then they fight for a predetermined amount of time, usually just a few hours. When one side reaches a certain casualty percentage, they automatically surrender. Jake stared at her. You're telling me galactic warfare is like a game? More like a very formal dance. And get this, the casualty limit for surrender is usually around 5%, sometimes as low as 2% for what they call civilized species. Nobody fights to the death. Nobody fights until they can't fight anymore. They reach their casualty limit, surrender, negotiate terms, and that's it. Commander Alex Stone had been listening from the doorway. That explains why they keep asking us to surrender. They think, we don't know the rules. Exactly, Dr. Brooks said. And there's more. I found references to something called the Galactic Warfare Conventions. Apparently there are rules about what weapons you can use, how you can target enemies, even how long battles are allowed to last. Jake shook his head. No wonder they're confused. We've never heard of their rules. The communication console beeped, and Lieutenant Karen Wade's voice came through. Captain, we're getting another alien transmission. This one's different. Put it through here, Jake said. A new alien face appeared on the screen. This one had blue skin and only 2 eyes, but they were much larger than human eyes. When it spoke, its voice sounded more formal than Admiral Zexthor's. This is Mediator Quintex of the Galactic Warfare Council. We are transmitting to address apparent protocol violations in the current conflict. Earth forces have continued combat operations despite sustaining casualty rates well beyond acceptable limits. We require immediate clarification of your surrender. Terms. Jake looked at Dr. Brooks, who nodded encouragingly. He stepped in front of the camera. This is Captain Jake Miller. We're not surrendering. We don't recognize your warfare conventions or your casualty limits. If you want our planet, you'll have to take it by force. The alien's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. Captain Miller, this is highly irregular. The Galactic Warfare Conventions exist to prevent unnecessary suffering. No civilized species fights beyond reasonable casualty limits. Then I guess we're not civilized by your standards, Jake replied. We fight until we win, or until we can't fight anymore. The alien was quiet for a long moment. Captain, are you saying your species will fight to total defeat? That you will not surrender even if you sustain 50% casualties? 70%? If necessary, yes. This is... The alien struggled for words. This is barbaric. No species has fought to total defeat in over 10,000 years. The psychological damage alone would be catastrophic for your population. Dr. Brooks stepped forward. Mediator Quintex, may I ask a question? How many species in the galaxy have refused to surrender when facing superior forces? Refused to surrender? The alien seemed confused by the question itself. No species refuses to surrender once they understand the situation. Surrender is simply the logical response to superior force. Why would any rational being choose death over negotiated submission? Because some things are worth dying for, Jake said simply. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the humans in silence. After a moment, Alex spoke up. They really don't understand us at all, do they? Dr. Brooks was already pulling up more files. It gets worse. I found records of something called the Pacification Database. It contains information about every species the Galactic Federation has ever encountered. Over 40,000 different civilizations, and every single one surrendered within the first week of contact. Every single one? Jake asked. Every one. The longest resistance on record lasted 6 days. Most species surrender within hours of seeing the alien fleet. She paused. Jake, I don't think they even have protocols for extended warfare. Their entire military doctrine is based on the assumption that enemies will give up quickly. This was confirmed an hour later when Commander Alex Stone returned from a briefing with the Global Defense Coordinators. The aliens are making mistakes, he reported. Big ones. They're leaving their supply ships undefended because they never expected to need supplies for more than a few days. Their attack patterns are predictable because they've never had to adapt mid-battle. What about their weapons? Jake asked. That's the strangest part. Most of their weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. They have devastating firepower, but they're not using it. It's like they're afraid to actually hurt us too badly. Dr. Brooks nodded. That fits with everything I'm learning. In their warfare conventions, the goal isn't to destroy the enemy. It's to demonstrate superiority until the enemy surrenders. Actually, killing large numbers is considered wasteful and barbaric. So, what happens now? Alex asked. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing alien positions around the globe. Human forces had taken heavy casualties, but they were still fighting. More importantly, they were learning. Every hour, human tactics improved while the aliens seemed increasingly confused and frustrated. Now we show them what human warfare really looks like, Jake said. We've been fighting defensively because we didn't understand what we were facing. But if they're not prepared for real war, then maybe it's time to take the fight to them. Dr. Brooks looked worried. Jake, their ships are still much more advanced than anything we have. Maybe. But advanced technology doesn't help much if you don't know how to use it properly in a real fight. He turned to Alex. Start planning offensive operations. It's time to see how well their warfare conventions work when someone breaks all the rules. Outside, the alien ships continued their methodical attacks, following procedures that had worked perfectly for thousands of years against thousands of different species. But for the first time in galactic history, those procedures were failing completely. Colonel Rick Santos knew he was going to die. The alien ships had been pounding Luna Base for 6 hours, and his defensive systems were failing one by one. Through the reinforced windows of the command center, he could see the Earth hanging in, space like a blue marble, and he wondered if he would ever see it again. Colonel, we've lost Sections C and D, reported Lieutenant Betty Clark, the former mining chief who had volunteered to help coordinate the base defense. The aliens punched through the outer hull. We've got maybe 2 hours of air left in those areas. Rick nodded grimly. Luna Base had never been designed as a military installation. It was a mining colony with 3,000 civilians and only 100 actual soldiers. When the alien war started, most people assumed the moon base would be ignored. They were wrong. "Sir, incoming transmission from the alien fleet," said Sergeant Troy Nelson from the communications station. "Let me guess. Another surrender demand. Yes. Sir, should I put it through?" Rick had heard 5 of these already in the past 6 hours. Each one sounded more frustrated than the last. Why not? Maybe they'll give us something useful this time. The alien face that appeared on screen was becoming familiar. Sub-Admiral Veltar had been trying to capture Luna Base according to what he called standard siege protocols. The alien's purple skin looked darker than usual, and his 4 eyes seemed to be twitching. "Luna Base Commander, this is Sub-Admiral Veltar. Your position is completely hopeless. We have sealed all escape routes and disabled your primary life support systems. Standard protocol requires your immediate surrender to prevent unnecessary casualties." Rick looked around the command center. His people were tired, scared, and running out of options. But nobody looked ready to give up. "Sub-Admiral, this is Colonel Santos. We've been through this before. The answer is still no." "Colonel Santos, you are not following established siege conventions. When defenders sustain 20% casualties and lose primary systems, surrender is the only logical option. Continuing resistance serves no strategic purpose. Maybe not by your standards, but this is our base, and we're not giving it up." The alien seemed genuinely puzzled. "Colonel, your situation analysis must be flawed. We have superior firepower, superior numbers, and control of all supply routes. Mathematical probability indicates your defeat is inevitable. Why do you persist in this futile resistance?" Rick almost smiled. "Sub-Admiral, has anyone ever told you that humans don't always do what's mathematically logical?" This is not acceptable," the alien replied. "Siege conventions exist to minimize casualties and expedite resolution. Your actions are prolonging unnecessary suffering." "Then maybe you should leave," Rick suggested. The transmission ended and Troy shook his head. "Sir, I don't think they understand us at all." "Good," Rick said. "That gives us an advantage. Betty, what's the status on your mining equipment?" Betty Clark had spent 15 years blasting rock on the lunar surface. When the attack started, she had immediately volunteered to help defend the base. Most of it's still functional. The aliens seem to think it's not military equipment, so they haven't targeted it directly. "Can we weaponize any of it?" Her eyes lit up. "Colonel, I've got some ideas about that. The industrial explosives alone could punch a hole in their hull, plating, and the mining drones could be modified for attack runs." Rick nodded. "Do it. Troy, I need you to prepare a special transmission to Earth." "What kind of transmission, sir?" "The kind that lets everyone know Luna Base isn't going down quietly." 2 hours later, the aliens got their first taste of human improvisation. Betty's mining drones, loaded with industrial explosives, slammed into the nearest alien ship. The weapons weren't sophisticated, but they were effective. More importantly, they were completely unexpected. "Sir, the alien ship is pulling back," Troy reported with excitement. "They're broadcasting on emergency frequencies." "What are they saying?" "Something about non-conventional weapons usage and protocol violations. They sound really upset." Rick wasn't surprised. According to the intercepted alien communications Dr. Brooks had shared with all human forces, galactic warfare had very strict rules about what weapons could be used. Industrial mining equipment apparently wasn't on the approved list. "Betty, how many more drones do we have?" "About 30. And Colonel, I've got an even better idea. The main mining laser is still operational. If we can retarget it, do it." The mining laser had been designed to cut through solid rock. When Betty redirected, it tore the alien ships, It sliced through their hull plating like a hot knife through butter. The aliens had never encountered industrial-grade cutting tools used as weapons. But Rick's real surprise came when the aliens finally breached the base perimeter. Sub-Admiral Veltar had apparently expected the humans to surrender once their defenses were penetrated. Instead, he found that humans were perfectly willing to fight hand-to-hand in the corridors of their own base. "Sir, the aliens are pulling back from Section B," reported Sergeant Mike Woods, who had been leading the close-quarters defense. "They seem confused about why we're still fighting inside the base." Rick understood. According to galactic conventions, once your perimeter was breached, you surrendered. You didn't retreat to secondary positions and keep fighting. You certainly didn't turn every corridor into a battlefield. The aliens tried to adapt, but they had never trained for this kind of warfare. Their weapons were designed for open space combat, not tight corridors. Their tactics assumed that defeated enemies would cooperate, not continue fighting. When the Luna base finally fell 12 hours later, it wasn't because the humans surrendered. It was because the aliens had finally managed to destroy enough of the base structure to make it uninhabitable. But even then, the surviving humans didn't give up. Troy Nelson's final transmission to Earth became legendary. As the command center filled with smoke and the remaining defenders prepared for their last stand, he broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Luna Base to all Earth forces. We're going down, but we're taking some of them with us. Colonel Santos wants everyone to know that Luna Base never surrendered. We fought to the end and we're proud of it." The transmission cut off as the base lost power, but the message was clear. The aliens had won the base, but they had paid a price no galactic military had ever been forced to pay. More importantly, they had learned something about humans that would haunt them for the rest of the war. Humans didn't follow the rules. They didn't surrender when mathematics said they should. They didn't stop fighting when their position became hopeless. They improvised weapons from mining equipment, turned civilian tools into military assets, and fought in ways that no galactic warfare convention had ever anticipated. Sub-Admiral Veltar's report to Admiral Zexthor was short and disturbing. The humans sustained 87% casualties before their position became untenable. They never attempted to surrender, even when resistance became tactically meaningless. Their behavior violates every principle of civilized warfare. Admiral Zexthor's response was even shorter. "How many of our ships did we lose taking the base?" 3 destroyed, 2 severely damaged. "Admiral, this level of resistance is unprecedented. No species has ever fought to such casualty levels without surrendering. And they turn mining equipment into weapons?" "Yes, Admiral. They appear to have no concept of approved weapon systems. They used whatever was available." There was a long pause before Admiral Zexthor replied. "Sub-Admiral, send a priority message to the Galactic Federation. Request additional forces, and warn them that conventional siege protocols are ineffective against human forces." "What reason should I give?" "Tell them the humans don't know how to lose." The message spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. In the Great Council chambers of a dozen different worlds, alien leaders gathered around holographic displays showing the impossible data from Earth. Ambassador Quillnex of the Tentari. Republic stared at the casualty reports with all 6 of his eye stalks. "These numbers cannot be correct," he said to his aide. "No species sustains 90% casualties without surrendering." "The data has been verified by 3 independent sources," his aide replied nervously. "The human lunar base fought until structural collapse. No surrender was ever attempted. Meanwhile, on Earth, engineer Sam Garcia was having the best week of his life. The alien technology they had captured from Luna Base was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined, and he was the man in charge of figuring out how it worked. "Dr. Brooks, you need to see this," Sam called from his laboratory at Houston Space Command. He was surrounded by pieces of alien equipment, holographic displays, and enough coffee cups to fuel a small army. Dr. Lisa Brooks hurried over from her own workstation. For the past week, she had been analyzing the alien communications intercepted during the Luna Base battle. "What did you find?" "Their weapons are incredible, but they're designed all wrong." Sam pointed to a disassembled alien rifle. "Look at this power setting interface. It has 12 different stun levels, but only one lethal setting. And get this, the lethal setting requires a special authorization code." "What do you mean?" "I mean, their soldiers can't just decide to kill someone. They need permission from a superior officer, and that permission has to be entered manually for each shot." Sam shook his head in amazement. "Can you imagine fighting a war where you need to ask permission every time you want to use deadly force?" Dr. Brooks studied the weapon interface. "Sam, this fits perfectly with what I'm learning about their society. They haven't just developed rules for warfare, they've built those rules into their equipment." "What kind of rules?" She pulled up her latest analysis on a nearby screen. "I've been studying the communications from dozens of alien species. It's not just the Krillians, Sam. The entire galaxy operates on the same basic principles. War is a formal process with predetermined outcomes." "How formal are we talking about?" "Extremely formal. Before any conflict begins, both sides submit detailed plans to something called the Galactic Warfare Council. They specify things like maximum casualty limits, acceptable target types, duration of hostilities, and surrender conditions. The Council reviews everything and approves the war before it can begin." Sam stared at her. "They get permission before starting a war?" "Not just permission, they get a complete rule book. Both sides know exactly how the war will proceed, what weapons can be used, and under what conditions they must surrender. It's more like a legal proceeding than an actual battle." This revelation was disturbing enough, but Dr. Brooks had discovered something even more troubling. "Sam, I found references to over 40,000 different conflicts in their databases. Want to guess how many resulted in total military defeat?" "How many?" "0. Not one. Every single war ended in negotiated surrender when one side reached their predetermined casualty limit." She paused. "Until now." The implications of this were becoming clear to military leaders around the globe. Major Kathy Ross, the head of Human Intelligence Operations, had been compiling reports from every captured alien she could find. Her conclusions were both encouraging and terrifying. "They've never faced an enemy that refused to surrender," she reported to Captain Jake Miller during their daily briefing. "Their entire military doctrine is based on the assumption that wars end quickly and cleanly." "What about their training?" Jake asked. "That's the interesting part. They train extensively for the formal aspects of warfare: communication protocols, casualty assessment, surrender negotiations. But they spend almost no time on extended combat operations." Jake considered this. "So they're trained diplomats who happen to carry weapons?" "More or less. And Jake, there's something else. I've been interviewing the alien prisoners we took from Luna Base. They're not just confused by our tactics, they're genuinely traumatized by them." "What do you mean?" Major Ross pulled up a medical report. "The alien medics say their soldiers are showing symptoms of what we would call severe psychological stress. Apparently, seeing an enemy fight to the death triggers some kind of deep-seated fear response in most galactic species. This made sense when Dr. Brooks shared her latest discovery about alien evolution. Most of these species have been domesticated, she explained. Not by other species, but by their own civilizations. For millions of years, they've been breeding aggression and territorial instincts out of their populations. Why would they do that? Sam asked. Because aggressive species tend to destroy themselves before they achieve interstellar travel. The galaxy is full of civilizations that learn to suppress their violent tendencies as a survival mechanism. But humans never did that. Exactly. We're the first species they've encountered that still has our natural predator instincts intact. To them, we're like meeting a pack of wild animals that happens to use technology. The psychological impact of human resistance was becoming evident in the alien communications. Ambassador Quillnex had called an emergency session of the Galactic Council, and the transcripts made for disturbing reading. The human species represents a fundamental threat to galactic stability, he argued before the assembled delegates. They do not recognize established warfare conventions. They do not surrender when defeated. They turn civilian equipment into military weapons without authorization. Surely you exaggerate, replied Councillor Murdak of the Severian Union. No, rational species fights beyond logical casualty limits. The humans sustained 93% casualties on their lunar installation, Ambassador Quillnex replied. They continued broadcasting defiant messages even as their base was being destroyed around them. The council chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, no species had ever displayed such behavior. What are you recommending? Asked the council chairman. Immediate military intervention. The Krillian Empire has requested additional forces. I propose we grant their request and assign a full battle fleet to end this conflict quickly. How large a fleet? 500 ships minimum. We need to overwhelm the humans so completely that even they will recognize the futility of resistance. But Dr. Brooks and her team were already preparing for exactly this scenario. The intercepted alien communications had given them detailed information about galactic military capabilities, and engineer Sam Garcia had been working around the clock to develop countermeasures. The good news is that their ships are powerful, but predictable, Sam reported. They're designed for formal battles against cooperative enemies. The bad news is that 500 alien ships is still 500 alien ships. Captain Jake Miller studied the tactical projections. Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet consisted of 12 ships using hybrid human-alien technology. The odds were not encouraging. Sam, how long until our new weapons are ready? Another week for the basic systems. Maybe 2 weeks for the really good stuff. We might not have 2 weeks. Dr. Brooks looked up from her analysis station. Jake, I've been thinking about this all wrong. We keep trying to match their technology, but that's not our advantage. What do you mean? Our advantage is that they don't understand us. They're sending 500 ships because they think this is a conventional military problem. But it's not. It's a psychological problem. I'm not following. They're terrified of us, Jake. We've broken every rule they understand about how civilized beings are supposed to behave. If we can use that fear... Captain Miller listened as Dr. Brooks outlined her idea, and for the first time since the war began, he found himself smiling. The aliens were about to learn another lesson about human warfare. Sometimes the best weapon isn't technology. Sometimes it's the willingness to do what your enemy thinks is impossible. Lieutenant Danny Hayes had never expected to be the first human to capture an alien warship intact. He was a Marine, trained for ground combat, not space operations. But when the opportunity presented itself, he didn't hesitate. The alien vessel had been damaged during the asteroid belt skirmish and was limping toward the outer solar system for repairs. Its crew of 40 aliens probably thought they were safe. They had never encountered humans willing to board an enemy ship during active combat. Remember, we need prisoners and intact technology, Danny told his boarding team as their modified shuttle approached the alien vessel. Try not to blow anything up unless you have to. Sergeant Amy Bell checked her weapon one more time. Sir, what if they resist? Then we show them what close quarters combat really means. The aliens had clearly never trained for boarding actions. When Danny's team cut through their hull and entered the ship, they found the crew huddled in the command center, broadcasting surrender signals in 16 different languages. Stand down your weapons and prepare for capture, Danny announced. Through his translator unit, the alien captain, a tall creature with green skin and 4 arms, stepped forward. Human soldiers, this action violates established boarding protocols. Ship-to-ship combat does not include personnel transfer during active hostilities. We make our own protocols, Danny replied. You can surrender now, or we can do this the hard way. The alien captain seemed genuinely confused. You are willing to engage in hand-to-hand combat aboard a spacecraft? The risk of hull breach alone makes this tactically unsound. Amy stepped forward, her rifle trained on the nearest alien. Captain, are you surrendering or not? What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The alien crew, faced with humans willing to fight aboard their own ship, simply gave up, not because they were defeated, but because they couldn't comprehend the level of risk humans were willing to accept. Within 2 hours, Danny had complete control of the alien vessel. More importantly, he had 40 alien prisoners who were happy to answer questions about galactic military doctrine. The interrogation sessions revealed just how unprepared the galaxy was for human warfare. Chief Scientist Mordak, the ship's senior researcher, was particularly helpful. Your species displays behavioral patterns that contradict all established models of intelligent life, he explained to Dr. Brooks during their first interview. According to our psychological profiles, no rational being engages in high-risk combat when safer alternatives exist. What if the safer alternatives are unacceptable? Dr. Brooks asked. Unacceptable how? Surrender ensures survival and eventual negotiated autonomy. Resistance ensures destruction. What if we value freedom more than survival? The alien scientist was quiet for a long moment. Such prioritization is theoretically possible, but we have never encountered it in practice. Most species rank survival above all other considerations. Most species, but not all. There are historical references to what we call extinct aggressive civilizations. Species that destroyed themselves through warfare before achieving interstellar capability. But you have achieved interstellar capability while retaining aggressive traits. This should be impossible. Dr. Brooks found this fascinating. Why impossible? Because aggressive species lack the cooperation necessary for advanced technology. They fight among themselves until their civilization collapses. Humans fight among themselves all the time. We just stop fighting when we face an external threat. The alien scientist made a sound that the translator interpreted as distress. You can coordinate aggression across tribal boundaries. This is unprecedented. Meanwhile, engineer Sam Garcia was having a field day with the captured alien technology. The intact ship provided him with advanced systems he had only theorized about before. Dr. Brooks, you need to see this. he called from the captured vessel's engineering section. Their entire fleet coordination system is based on predetermined battle plans. What do you mean? I mean, once they start a battle, they can't really adapt. Look at this. He showed her the alien command interface. Every ship in their fleet follows a detailed script. Move to position A, fire at target B, retreat to position C if casualties exceed X%. They can't improvise? Not easily. Their commanders can override the script, but it requires approval from higher authority. And that approval takes time. Dr. Brooks studied the system. Sam, this explains why they keep making the same tactical mistakes. They're not learning from our tactics because their system doesn't allow for rapid adaptation. Exactly. And there's more. Their psychological warfare protocols are designed to break enemy morale through displays of superior technology. But they have no doctrine for dealing with enemies who aren't impressed by superior technology. This was confirmed when the Second Galactic Fleet arrived in the solar system. Admiral Kethamore of the Hegemony brought 500 ships, exactly, as the Galactic Council had authorized. His opening transmission was broadcast on all human frequencies. This is Admiral Kethamore commanding the Second Galactic Fleet. Earth forces, you are facing overwhelming superior numbers and technology. Continued resistance is futile. You have 12 hours to surrender all military forces and prepare for formal integration into the Galactic Federation. Captain Jake Miller's response was becoming predictably human. Admiral, this is Captain Miller. We've heard this speech before. The answer is still no. Captain Miller, perhaps you do not understand the magnitude of forces arrayed against you. We have 500 warships, each one capable of destroying your largest vessels. Then you'll have to destroy us, Jake replied simply. Admiral Kethamore clearly expected a different response. His next transmission came 6 hours later, and his tone was noticeably different. Captain Miller, our psychological warfare specialists, indicate that your species may be suffering from a form of mass delusion. We are prepared to offer medical assistance to correct this condition. We're not delusional, Admiral. We're just not giving up. But why? Mathematical analysis clearly demonstrates that resistance is impossible. Your fleet consists of 12 vessels against our 500. Your ground forces number in the millions against our billions. Logic dictates immediate surrender. Jake looked around the command center, where his staff was preparing for what everyone knew would be humanity's last stand. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We don't always do what logic dictates. The alien admiral's confusion was evident in his next communication. Captain, are you saying your species is not rational? We're rational when it suits us. But when our survival is at stake, we do whatever it takes to win. Even if victory is impossible? Especially then. The Second Galactic Fleet's attack began 18 hours later, and it immediately became clear that the aliens had learned nothing from their previous encounters with humans. They followed their standard battle protocols, expecting human forces to surrender once casualties reached acceptable limits. Instead, they encountered Commander Lisa Park and her ship, the Defiance. When Lisa's vessel lost 80% of its crew and most of its weapon systems, she did something no galactic military commander had ever seen. She rammed her burning ship directly into the alien flagship. The explosion destroyed both vessels, but the psychological impact on the alien fleet was devastating. Admiral Kethamore's emergency transmission to the Galactic Council was intercepted by human intelligence. Council Command, this is Admiral Kethamore. Human forces are employing suicide tactics. Repeat, they are deliberately destroying their own. vessels to inflict casualties. This violates every principle of rational warfare. Admiral, clarify your report. Are you saying the humans are deliberately sacrificing ships? Affirmative. The human vessel Defiance sustained catastrophic damage and chose to ram our flagship rather than surrender. Both ships were destroyed. There was a long pause before the Council responded. Admiral, such tactics are considered proof of psychological breakdown. You are authorized to begin medical intervention protocols. Council Command, I don't think you understand. The humans aren't having psychological breakdowns. They're choosing to die rather than surrender. Another pause, longer this time. Admiral, that is impossible. No rational species chooses death over survival when survival is offered. Then the humans aren't rational, Admiral Kethmore replied. And Council Command, I need to report something else. Our casualty rates are exceeding projections. The humans are inflicting significant damage despite their technological disadvantages. How is this possible? They use tactics we've never encountered. They attack damaged ships that should be considered neutralized. They continue fighting even when cut off from their command structure. They ignore standard battlefield communications and refuse all surrender negotiations. The transmission ended, but human intelligence continued monitoring alien communications throughout the battle. What they heard was the sound of an entire galactic civilization trying to understand something completely outside their experience. The humans weren't just winning individual battles. They were shattering every assumption the galaxy had about how wars were supposed to work. Admiral Kevin Wright stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship Vengeance and watched the largest alien armada in galactic history approach the solar system. 12 different species had contributed ships to this force. Over 2,000 vessels darkened the space between Mars and Jupiter, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire planets. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet, reported Communications Officer Janet Pierce. Put it through. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to Supreme Admiral Thal Goran of the Consortium, a massive creature with silver skin and what appeared to be natural armor plating. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never been defeated. This is Supreme Admiral Thal Goran commanding the Galactic Enforcement Fleet. Earth forces, you are facing the combined might of 12 civilizations. Over 2,000 ships stand ready to enforce the will of the Galactic Federation. This is your final opportunity to surrender with honor. Admiral Wright looked around his bridge crew. They were young, mostly, and scared. They had every right to be. Earth's fleet had grown to 40 ships using captured alien technology, but 40 ships against 2,000 was still a hopeless battle. Supreme Admiral, this is Admiral Kevin Wright of the Earth Defense Force. I appreciate the offer, but we'll have to decline. The aliens' armored features seemed to shift in what might have been surprise. Admiral Wright, perhaps you do not comprehend the situation. We represent the finest military forces in the galaxy. Our combined experience spans over 50,000 successful pacification campaigns. That's impressive, Kevin replied, but you've never fought humans before. Admiral, we have studied your species extensively. Your tactical capabilities are limited, your technology is primitive, and your numerical disadvantage is overwhelming. Mathematical analysis indicates a victory probability of 0%. Kevin almost smiled. Supreme Admiral, let me ask you something. In those 50,000 campaigns, how many enemies fought to the last ship? No intelligent species fights to total destruction when survival alternatives exist. Then you're about to learn something new about warfare. The transmission ended, and Kevin turned to his tactical officer, Commander Tony Cruz. Tony, give me the status on our special preparations. All ships report ready, sir. The asteroid field positioning is complete, and our nuclear contingency is armed and ready. Good. It's time to show them what human space combat really looks like. The battle began 3 hours later, when the alien armada moved into standard formation around Earth. They followed established protocols, broadcasting surrender demands while demonstrating their overwhelming firepower. What they didn't expect was for the human fleet to attack immediately. Kevin led the charge himself, taking his 40 ships directly into the center of the alien formation. It was a move that violated every principle of galactic warfare, and it achieved complete tactical surprise. "Sir, the aliens are breaking formation," reported Tony Cruz with excitement. "They're not prepared for a direct assault." The reason was simple. In galactic warfare, the smaller force always tried to delay and negotiate. They never launched immediate attacks against superior numbers. But humans didn't follow galactic rules. "Focus fire on their command ships," Kevin ordered. "Make them work to coordinate their response." The human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than the alien vessels, darted through the massive formation like wolves attacking a herd. They targeted communication arrays, command centers, and coordination systems. Within minutes, the perfect alien formation had become a confused mass of ships trying to avoid hitting each other. But the real surprise came when the aliens tried to pursue the human fleet into the asteroid field. Commander Lisa Park had taken over the Defiance II after the original was destroyed in the previous battle. Her ship led a squadron of 12 vessels deep into the asteroids, with 300 alien ships in hot pursuit. "Lisa, you sure about this?" Kevin asked over the communication channel. "Trust me, Admiral, these aliens have never fought in a debris field before." She was right. The alien ships designed for open space combat struggled to navigate the dense asteroid field. Their formation tactics became useless when they couldn't maintain proper spacing. Their long-range weapons were ineffective when they couldn't get clear shots. Meanwhile, the human ships used the asteroids as cover, popping out to launch quick attacks before disappearing again. It was guerrilla warfare in space, and the aliens had no doctrine for dealing with it. "Sir, we're getting reports from all sectors," Tony reported. "The aliens are taking heavy casualties in the asteroid field. They're requesting instructions from their command ships." What are the command ships telling them? That's the interesting part. They're not responding. I think we've disrupted their command structure more than we realized. This was confirmed when Supreme Admiral Thalgaron sent an emergency transmission on all frequencies. "Earth forces, your tactics violate established space combat protocols. Fighting in debris fields is prohibited under Galactic Warfare Convention 7. Immediate cessation of hostilities is required." Kevin's response was broadcast to both the human and alien fleets. "Supreme Admiral, we don't recognize your conventions. If you want to fight us, you'll have to do it our way. This is unacceptable. Your tactics create unnecessary hazards for both forces. Then leave." The alien admiral's next decision would haunt galactic military academies for centuries. Faced with an enemy that refused to follow the rules, he ordered his entire fleet to enter the asteroid field and engage the humans directly. It was a disaster. The alien ships, designed for formal fleet actions, collided with asteroids, each other, and the debris created by their own weapons fire. The human ships, smaller and more agile, turned the asteroid field into a maze of death traps. But Kevin's real masterstroke came when the alien fleet finally seemed to be adapting to asteroid warfare. That's when he activated humanity's ultimate contingency plan. All ships execute nuclear protocol, he ordered. The aliens had never encountered nuclear weapons used in space combat. Their conventions prohibited weapons of mass destruction, and their ships weren't designed to withstand atomic explosions. When the first nuclear torpedo detonated among their formations, the psychological impact was even greater than the physical damage. Sir, we're receiving multiple surrender requests from individual alien ships, Janet reported. They're asking for protection from nuclear weapons. Tell them we'll accept individual surrenders, but the overall battle continues until their fleet withdraws. This created chaos in the alien command structure. Individual ships began surrendering or retreating without orders, while others tried to maintain formation. The perfect discipline that had characterized galactic warfare for millennia broke down completely. Supreme Admiral Thalgaron made one last attempt to restore order. All ships maintain formation and continue the attack. Human nuclear weapons have limited effectiveness in open space. But his fleet commanders were no longer listening. Captain after captain reported that their crews were refusing to continue the battle. The sight of nuclear explosions had triggered deep-seated fears that no amount of military discipline could overcome. The turning point came when Commander Lisa Park, her ship heavily damaged and her crew reduced to 12 survivors, made a decision that would echo throughout the galaxy. Instead of surrendering or retreating, she aimed her dying ship at the alien flagship and armed every nuclear weapon she had left. Admiral Wright, this is Lisa Park. Tell Earth that the Defiance never backed down. Her ship exploded in a nuclear fireball that lit up the asteroid field like a miniature sun. The alien flagship survived, but Supreme Admiral Thalgoron's next transmission revealed the true cost of the battle. Galactic Command, this is Supreme Admiral Thalgoron. Request immediate fleet withdrawal. Human forces employ tactics that cannot be countered by conventional means. Admiral, clarify your status. We have sustained 30% casualties against an enemy 1/50th our size. Their commander just deliberately destroyed her own ship in a nuclear attack rather than surrender. Galactic Command, the humans fight like nothing we've ever encountered. Admiral, you have overwhelming numerical superiority. Numbers don't matter when the enemy refuses to acknowledge mathematical reality. They attack superior forces, fight in impossible conditions, and choose death over surrender. My fleet commanders are requesting withdrawal. There was a long pause before Galactic Command responded. Admiral, you are authorized to withdraw to minimum safe distance and request reinforcements. How many reinforcements? Another pause, longer this time. How many do you think you need? Supreme Admiral Thalgaron looked at the tactical display, showing his scattered, demoralized fleet and the small group of human ships that had somehow defeated them. All of them, he said quietly. Send every ship in the galaxy. The transmission ended, and Admiral Kevin Wright realized that humanity had just crossed a line. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They had become the first species in galactic history to make the entire galaxy afraid. The stories spread faster than any fleet could travel. Across the galaxy, in council chambers and military academies, on distant outposts and core worlds, beings gathered around communication devices to hear the impossible reports from the soul. Captain Mike Foster had never expected to become humanity's first psychological warfare specialist, but the job had found him anyway. As reports poured in from across the galaxy, he realized that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was fear. Dr. Brooks, you need to hear this, Mike called from his monitoring station at Houston Space Command. We're intercepting communications from 17 different species, and they're all saying the same thing. Dr. Lisa Brooks hurried over, followed by Dr. Janet Pierce, who had become Earth's leading expert on alien psychology. The three of them had been analyzing alien communications for weeks, documenting the psychological impact of human warfare on galactic civilization. "Play the transmission," Dr. Brooks said. The alien voice that came through the speakers belonged to Commander Nexphone of the Valdari fleet. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their military prowess, but his report to Valdari High Command revealed something that had never been heard before in their communications: genuine fear. "High Command, this is Commander Nexphone reporting from the Centauri border. We have received detailed briefings on human combat capabilities. Request immediate reassignment to any sector not adjacent to Sol system. Commander, explain your request." "High Command, the humans fight in ways that contradict all established military doctrine. They do not surrender when defeated. They do not negotiate when outnumbered. They deliberately destroy their own vessels to inflict casualties. Commander, these reports have been deemed exaggerated by the Military Analysis Board." "High Command, with respect, the Military Analysis Board has not faced human forces. I have studied every available combat recording. These beings attack ships 20 times their size. They continue fighting with 90% casualties. They use nuclear weapons in close combat." There was a pause before High Command responded. "Commander, are you requesting transfer due to combat anxiety?" "High Command, I am requesting transfer because fighting humans is not warfare. It is survival horror." Dr. Janet Pierce paused the recording. "Mike, this is the 15th similar request we've intercepted today. Military units across the galaxy are refusing assignments to sectors near Earth." "It gets better," Mike replied. "We've also intercepted communications from the Galactic Military Academy. They're having to create entirely new courses on irregular warfare and psychological resilience in extended combat." Dr. Brooks pulled up another file on her workstation. "I've been analyzing the psychological profiles the aliens have compiled on humans. They classify us as an aberrant aggressive species with pathological resistance to defeat." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Mike asked. "It means they think we're insane," Dr. Pierce replied, "and they're terrified of us." This fear was manifesting in ways that surprised even the human analysts. On the frontier world of Kethmore Prime, an entire alien garrison had requested evacuation after receiving reports that humans were expanding into adjacent systems. The evacuation request, intercepted by human intelligence, made for fascinating reading. "Galactic Defense Command, this is Colonel Mayvar commanding Kethmore Garrison, requesting immediate evacuation of all personnel from this sector. Colonel, explain the nature of the threat." "Human expansion, sir. Intelligence reports indicate they have established mining operations in the Proxima system, only 4 light years from our position." "Colonel, mining operations do not constitute a military threat." "Sir, these are humans. Their mining operations could be cover for military installations. Their civilian equipment can be weaponized. Sir, they turned asteroid mining lasers into ship-killing weapons." "Colonel, you are requesting evacuation because humans are mining asteroids 4 light years away?" "Sir, you don't understand. These beings don't think like us. They don't follow our rules. If they decide our garrison is a threat to their mining operation, they might attack. And, sir, we don't have protocols for defending against an enemy that refuses to surrender." The request was denied, but the fact that it was made at all revealed how deeply human tactics had shaken galactic military confidence. The psychological warfare was becoming more sophisticated as well. Captain Mike Foster had begun broadcasting selected human historical documentaries on frequencies known to be monitored by alien intelligence services. "Today we're sending them footage from the Battle of Thermopylae," he reported to Captain Jake Miller during their daily briefing. 300 Spartans holding off a vastly superior force. Think they'll understand the message? Oh, they'll understand. We've been monitoring their analysis teams. Yesterday they spent 6 hours trying to figure out why the Spartans didn't surrender when Xerxes offered them terms. Dr. Janet Pierce had been working on an even more disturbing project, analyzing how human behavior affected alien psychology at the individual level. Her interviews with alien prisoners revealed trauma responses that went beyond normal combat stress. They described something they call human nightmares, she explained to the command staff. Recurring dreams where they're being pursued by enemies, who won't stop chasing them, won't accept surrender, and won't follow any rules. That's just normal combat stress, suggested Commander Alex Stone. No, it's not. Their species evolved without persistence hunting. They don't have psychological frameworks for dealing with predators that never give up. To them, our behavior is literally incomprehensible. This incomprehension was evident in the latest communication from the Galactic Federation. Ambassador Quillnex had requested a direct diplomatic channel to Earth leadership, and his message revealed the depth of galactic confusion about human behavior. Earth government, this is Ambassador Quillnex representing the Galactic Federation Council. We request immediate negotiations to establish mutual understanding of warfare protocols. President Nancy Wells responded personally from Washington. Ambassador, we're willing to discuss terms for your withdrawal from our solar system. Madam President, we wish to establish rules of engagement for future conflicts. The current situation is unacceptable to galactic stability. What do you mean? Madam President, your military forces employ tactics that create psychological trauma in opposing forces. This is considered a violation of civilized warfare principles. President Wells paused before responding. Ambassador, are you saying we're not allowed to win battles? You are allowed to win, but within established parameters. Acceptable victory conditions include tactical superiority, technological advantage, or numerical supremacy. What you may not do is continue fighting when defeat is mathematically certain. Why not? Because it causes psychological damage to the victorious forces. No species should be required to completely destroy an enemy to achieve victory. Dr. Brooks, who was monitoring the conversation, couldn't help but smile. The aliens weren't just afraid of losing to humans, they were afraid of what winning against humans would do to them psychologically. The conversation continued, and Ambassador Quillnex made an offer that revealed just how desperate the galactic situation had become. Madam President, the Galactic Federation is prepared to offer humanity a unique position in galactic affairs. You would be granted full membership with special status. What kind of special status? You would serve as our military enforcement arm. When the Federation faces threats that require unconventional responses, human forces would be deployed. President Wells looked at her advisors, who were all trying not to laugh. Ambassador, are you offering to make us the galaxy's soldiers? In a manner of speaking, yes. Your species appears uniquely suited for military operations that other civilizations find psychologically challenging, such as fighting enemies to total defeat, employing irregular tactics, engaging in extended combat operations. The ambassador paused. Madam President, your species is the only one in the galaxy that can wage war without suffering permanent psychological damage. The offer was still being considered when new reports arrived from the outer systems. Human merchant vessels were beginning to explore nearby star systems, and their presence was having an unexpected effect on local alien populations. The Centauri colonies are requesting Federation protection, reported Major Kathy Ross. Not from us, from pirates and raiders. Apparently, the criminal organizations are afraid to operate in systems where humans might be present. Why? Because we have a reputation for hunting down enemies indefinitely. Galactic criminals are used to law enforcement that gives up after a reasonable pursuit. They've never faced enemies who track them across multiple star systems. Captain Mike Foster grinned. So we're accidentally establishing peace through reputation alone? It looks that way. The vegan trade routes have seen a 70% reduction in piracy since we started operating in that sector. The psychological impact of human warfare was reshaping galactic civilization in ways no one had anticipated. And the war wasn't even over yet. President Wells looked at her advisors. General Kate Murphy nodded slightly. Captain Jake Miller smiled. Dr. Brooks looked fascinated by the implications. Ambassador, the president said, we accept. The treaty signing was broadcast across the galaxy, and the reaction was immediate. On frontier worlds threatened by raiders, colonial administrators breathed sighs of relief. In core systems plagued by criminal organizations, law enforcement officials began planning operations they had never dared attempt before. But perhaps the most telling response came from the Krillian Reconstruction government. Admiral Zex Thor, now serving as a civilian administrator, sent a personal message to General Kate Murphy. General, I want you to know that the Krillian people harbor no resentment toward humanity. You fought us fairly according to your own principles. More importantly, you've shown the galaxy something we had forgotten. What's that? That sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be willing to fight without limits for what you believe in. The message ended, and Kate turned to look out the window of her new office at Galactic Federation headquarters. Earth's flag flew beside those of 43 other civilizations, but there was something different about it. Every other flag represented a species that had learned to surrender. When faced with superior force, Earth's flag represented the one species that had never learned to give up, and across the galaxy, that made all the difference. 6 months later, when the automated defense network of Sector 7 malfunctioned and began attacking all ships in the region, the call went out immediately. Send the humans! Captain Mike Foster, now commanding the Federation's Special Operations Fleet, smiled as he received the mission briefing. Another enemy that doesn't know. General Kate Murphy stood on the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable and watched the Krillian homeworld grow larger on the main screen. Behind her, the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle of the war. General, we're receiving multiple surrender requests from the orbital defense platforms, reported Captain Jim Parker, who commanded the ground assault forces. They're asking for terms before we even begin the attack. Kate wasn't surprised. The psychological warfare campaign had been so effective that many alien military units were surrendering at the mere sight of human ships. But this battle was different. This was the Krillian homeworld, the heart of the empire that had started the war. Ignore the surrender requests, she ordered. We finish this properly. The assault on Krillian began at dawn, local time. Human ships descended through the atmosphere using tactics that no galactic military had ever seen. Combined orbital and ground assault with real-time coordination between space and surface forces. Admiral Zex Thor, the Krillian commander who had first demanded Earth's surrender so long ago, made a final desperate transmission as human forces approached his capital city. "General Murphy, this is Admiral Zexthor. I am prepared to discuss terms for the surrender of all Krillian forces. Please state your conditions." Kate's response was broadcast to every human ship and every alien monitoring station in the system. "Admiral, my condition is simple. Total, unconditional surrender of the Krillian Empire and formal acknowledgement that Earth will never be threatened. Again, General, such terms are unprecedented in galactic warfare. No empire has ever surrendered completely to an enemy force. Then you'll be the first." What followed became known as the Battle of Krillian, though historians would later argue it was more of a demonstration than a battle. The Krillian forces, trained for formal warfare with predetermined casualty limits, simply couldn't cope with human tactics. Colonel Jim Parker led the ground assault personally, and his after-action report captured the surreal nature of urban combat against an enemy that didn't understand how to fight in cities. The Krillians had defensive positions, but they kept broadcasting surrender requests every time we advanced. When we ignored the requests and kept fighting, they seemed genuinely confused about what to do next. The alien defenders had never trained for house-to-house combat. Their doctrine assumed that any enemy reaching urban areas would accept their surrender and begin negotiating terms. When human forces continued advancing, block by block, building by building, the alien command structure broke down completely. "Sir, we're getting reports from all sectors," reported Lieutenant Tony Cruz from his position with the advanced scouts. "The aliens are abandoning their positions. They're not retreating. They're just leaving their weapons and walking away." This mass abandonment of positions wasn't cowardice in the traditional sense. Dr. Janet Pierce, who was monitoring the battle from orbit, explained what was happening to the human command staff. "They're experiencing what we might call psychological collapse," she reported. "Their mental framework for warfare simply can't process enemies who continue fighting in civilian areas. To them, we're violating the most fundamental rules of civilized behavior." The psychological impact intensified when human forces reached the Krillian government complex. Instead of the formal siege that Galactic Convention required, Colonel Parker's troops did something unprecedented. They kept fighting inside government buildings. "General, we've reached the Imperial Council chambers," Jim reported over the radio. "The Krillian leadership is requesting immediate negotiations. They want to surrender." Are they offering complete surrender? They're offering to discuss terms. Not good enough. Keep advancing. What happened next shocked not just the Krillians, but monitoring stations across the galaxy. Human soldiers fought their way into the most sacred spaces of Krillian government, spaces that had never seen combat in 10,000 years of galactic civilization. The sight of armed humans in the Imperial Council chambers, continuing to fight despite repeated surrender offers, broke something fundamental in the Krillian psyche. Admiral Zexthor's final transmission was broadcast across the galaxy. "All forces, all commands, all citizens of the Krillian Empire, I hereby order complete and unconditional surrender to human forces. Lay down all weapons, offer no resistance, comply with all human demands." But even this total surrender didn't end the fighting immediately. Human forces continued their advance until they had physically occupied every government building, every military installation, and every strategic location on the planet. "Sir, the aliens are asking why we haven't stopped fighting," Jim reported from the captured Imperial Palace. "They say they've surrendered. Tell them we'll stop when we're satisfied that the surrender is complete," Kate replied. This continued for 6 more hours. human forces methodically secured the entire planet, while bewildered Krillian civilians watched invaders who refused to act like conquerors. The humans didn't loot, didn't celebrate, didn't engage in the ritualized victory behaviors that usually followed galactic conflicts. They just kept working. The formal surrender ceremony took place in the Imperial Council chambers, with representatives from 12 different galactic civilizations present as witnesses. Admiral Zexthor signed the surrender documents while standing in a room occupied by armed human soldiers. "General Murphy," he said as he signed the final document, "your species has changed warfare forever. No military in the galaxy will ever again assume that enemies will follow established conventions." "That was the idea," Kate replied. But the real changes were only beginning. Within days of the Krillian surrender, messages arrived from across the galaxy. Not threats or demands for vengeance, but requests for human military assistance. The first came from the Centauri Federation. "We are experiencing persistent raider attacks along our outer borders. Traditional response methods have proven ineffective. We request human military consultation." President Nancy Wells read the request during her daily briefing with the military leadership. "They want us to hunt pirates?" "Not just pirates," reported Major Kathy Ross. "We're getting similar requests from the Vegan Trade Alliance, the Outer Rim Colonies, and the Neutral Zone Administration. They all have the same problem: enemies who don't follow galactic conventions." Dr. Lisa Brooks, who had become Earth's leading expert on galactic affairs, explained the situation. "It turns out the galaxy has lots of problems that their conventional military can't handle. Rogue AI systems that don't surrender when defeated, automated defense networks that keep fighting indefinitely, criminal organizations that ignore law enforcement. And they want us to solve these problems? We're the only species that specializes in fighting enemies who won't give up." The formal offer came 3 weeks later. Ambassador Quillnex delivered it personally, traveling to Earth aboard a ship flying flags of truce from 17 different civilizations. "Madam President," he announced during the formal ceremony at the United Nations, "the Galactic Federation hereby offers humanity full membership with the position of Military Enforcement Authority." "What does that mean exactly?" President Wells asked. "It means that when the Federation faces military problems that cannot be resolved through conventional means, human forces will be deployed to resolve them. In exchange, humanity receives full galactic citizenship, access to all Federation technology, and guaranteed sovereignty over your home system. You want us to be the galaxy's soldiers? More than that. You would be the galaxy's protectors. The final resort when diplomatic solutions fail and conventional military force proves inadequate."